Okay, so I have a friend who goes from band to band and he keeps getting kicked out of all these projects. And, I can understand after one or two, maybe there's personality problems or whatever within the band, it just didn't work out. But after like 5 or 6 times, you got to start to look inward and maybe see that you're the problem and that there might be a few things you have to work on to really start to be able to be in bands more successfully. And that's what this video is about. If you have a couple of blind spots, which we all do, hopefully some of these tips will help you out and resonate with you. And then maybe you could fix them and you could find yourself in a better position when it comes to staying with bands for a long time. So first off, let's mention a few things that I shouldn't even have to mention. The obvious stuff. Don't sleep with the singer's girlfriend, don't get wasted before a show, don't punch the drummer during the set. That kind of stuff I feel like I shouldn't have to mention, but you'd be really surprised actually. But if you can't even see why that would be wrong, then nothing I say today is going to help you. It's going to be very hard to help you in general. So my overall lesson today can be broken down into kind of an acronym. I just call it m.y.v, which is a very stupid acronym, m.y.v. But it basically means make yourself valuable. So in any capacity that you can make yourself worth more in the band, it's way harder to get rid of you as a musician. And here are some of the things that will make you more valuable as a band musician. First off, be so good at your instrument. Be a master as much as you can at what you play. A lot of people forget about that and they work on maybe learning the songs or just trying to look cool on stage, and they forget about the very reason they're in the band is to perform the best with their instrument. So don't be one of those people that get stagnant after you join a band and stop working on your chops, because a lot of people think you practice and practice to get into a band, and then they sort of level off and that's it. That happens a lot of the time. You'd be surprised. So don't be one of those people. Make sure you keep up on your practice on your instrument, and more opportunities will open up. Not to mention you just make yourself more valuable within the band you're already in. Now that being said, make sure you know the parts that you play in the band back and forth. Okay, there's going to be many times on stage where you're not going to be able to hear things the way you want. The monitors aren't working that night. The drummer's playing too loud or whatever. You just can't hear what you're used to hearing. So if you really know your stuff, you should be able to play your parts in the most horrendous conditions. Over the years, I've realized this the hard way. There's a couple of shows where I couldn't hear myself at all. One recently where I injured my ear and everything was making two tones at once. And I really had to rely on my knowledge of the instrument and the songs in order to get through it. So just make sure you know your parts as well as you can. Now, once you have your mastery of your instrument in check, like you keep working on things, you know the songs in your band, in your project, inside and out, you really have to realize that there's always going to be some weak spots that you're able to work on. So I have plenty and I'm always working on them, but you have to be honest with yourself. You have to say, you know what? I suck at backing vocals, or my stage presence is just lame. Those little things might seem little, but the more you work on them, they grow and they become a part of what you are and what you have to offer to the band. So let's say you're a decent guitar player who can also sing backing vocals and you look cool on stage. Let's say you worked on all those weak spots. It just raises your stock in the band and it makes you way harder to replace and just more valuable in general. Be sure you're very dependable as a musician. Show up on time if you can. If you're not going to, it's easy to text these days. Back before we had texting and all that stuff, we'd have gigs in the middle of Wisconsin, let's say, and you were going to be late. It was really hard to get a hold of anybody. But these days, there's no excuse to not just throw a text out if you're going to be late or whatever. And then, don't skip practices. Once again, these are kind of obvious things, but you'd be surprised. And then make sure you show up to every gig prepared. I did a whole video on what professionals do that non-professionals don't do. So check that out if you really want details on that. Okay, try not to be stingy as a person in a band. A lot of people really, they just kind of look at the money figure. How much are we going to make at this show? What am I taking home? One thing you might want to start to do is, instead of thinking about what can I take from the band, this sounds like a JFK speech, make sure that you figure out ways of giving back to the group. It doesn't even mean just financially, but in this one topic, I just want to bring this up. Don't be afraid to maybe take a little bit of what you make and put it towards something else in the band, like t-shirts or promotional type stuff. If everybody kind of has a little bit of a financial stake in the band, it's really impressive. It's really surprising, I should say, how people will work together a little bit more because they feel like they have a part in the band, a bigger part than just showing up and playing. That being said, try really hard to carve out a place for you in the band. Not everybody can be the leader of a band, and not everybody should be a follower in the band. There's got to be a good mix of that. But even if, let's say, you're the lowest on the totem pole, maybe you joined the band last and some other people are running the show, don't just think of yourself as someone who just shows up and plays, because those kind of people are super easy to replace. They just, you can get anybody to show up and play the parts. Carve out another place for yourself. Maybe you're the social media person. You jump on Facebook before a show and you promote it. You have a little bit of a specialty in that area. Find out what you're good at and really try to put those strengths towards the band. And it could be a lot of different things. You could be the person that makes the set list. You could be the person who after the show goes out and talks to people. Because I know personally I don't like to do that. I like to pack up and just leave. So that's one of my weaknesses. But, if you're really good at socializing, maybe you're the person that's going to network and get you guys the next gig. And that's super valuable, almost as important as being a decent musician. Try to have a positive vibe within the band. You'd be surprised how important that is. It makes people want to be around you, and you don't want to be the person that everybody sort of dreads being around when you come to practice. It used to happen in a couple bands that I was in where we'd be playing and everything's great, and all of a sudden that one person would show up and they'd bring a lot of darkness and negativity, and all of a sudden the whole group felt gross, and it really makes you not want to show up to practice. It makes you not want to do your best for the group. So if you are that kind of person, be aware of it and take steps to start to change that. It's kind of hard to change what you feel you naturally are inside, but if you're aware of it and you can start to take steps, there is hope. This is an area that I have some problems with sometimes, and that's knowing who the leader of the band is and respect that role. Because sometimes I join a band and I want to do too much. All of a sudden I see all these things that I could fix and I want to just take over. So I'm working on this right now. Know who the leader of the band is or are. Maybe there are a couple leaders of a band. And respect your role and respect their role. So don't overstep your boundaries if possible, unless they're okay with you doing that. Let's say you want to design a t-shirt and the leader of the band wanted to do that. Well, you don't want to, overrule them when it's their job to be making the decisions. So make sure you know your role, don't overstep it. It just kind of leads to weird tensions down the road, and then it always leads to some kind of issue where somebody feels like they're being overshadowed or they're doing too much. So keep an eye on your role in the band and respect it as much as you can. Now, if you do find yourself at the bottom of the totem pole and you find that you have no say in the band at all, like there's a couple people that lead the band, the most valuable thing you can do is go along with their ideas and don't fight it. So like I said, it's up to you if you really want to be in this project after all. So if you believe in the leadership in the band and you might find yourself feeling a little powerless in the group, it doesn't mean that you should be leaving the band or that something's completely wrong. Sometimes it just means your job in the band is to play your part and go along with the decisions of whoever's leading the band. How could a band function if everybody's making the decisions? It would just pull the band in many different directions. It never seems to work out, even though it seems like it's a good idea on paper. So sometimes be okay with just going along with other people's ideas, especially if they're the ones who are the leaders of the band. Another thing I'm working on really hard lately, especially in the last couple days, is really getting better at communicating what you feel. It's easy to just kind of sit back and let things build up inside, and then you really don't know how other people feel, and the next thing you know, it escalates to something that you don't want to happen, and that recently happened to me. So one thing I'm working on with communication is realizing that people can't read my mind. Sometimes I think something's not happening in the band that I think needs to, and I really won't say anything. I just have this expectation in my brain that everybody thinks like me, like, oh, everybody should know that we need this or that, when it's not true. Sometimes people just aren't aware of what you see and vice versa. So keep in mind, an open communication is very important. Once again, even though it's not the most ideal thing, it's easy to text somebody. Saying it in person's probably a better idea if you're not, if you don't have very good texting skills. It's easy to give people the wrong impression as far as what you're trying to say. But really try to stay open and see if the rest of the band can follow that. And at least when problems come up, they'll come up and be solved right away versus letting them just go on and build up and become huge monsters, which has happened to me many times in my experiences. So trying to work on that myself. Okay, the last two things kind of go hand in hand. The first thing I would say is make sure you actually care about the project. It seems like an eye roller, like no duh, but you'd be surprised. Some people, they go along with things, they just get used to it. Suddenly their passion for the group kind of dissipates and they don't really care as much anymore. They're just showing up for the paycheck or because that's all they know. Maybe they can't get in any other projects and they really feel secure with your band. But this goes along with the very last thing I'll say. If you feel like you've lost your passion for the band, for the project, and you just don't feel like you're putting in your efforts anymore, do the band a favor and just step away. That could save a lot of people a lot of trouble. So, you're not doing your best. You don't want to do your best because you really don't care anymore. Step aside and let someone else come in who has enthusiasm, who wants to help the band out and take over from your spot. It's probably the best thing you could do for the group at that time. And on the off chance that you did everything that I just mentioned and you still get fired from a band, at least you did everything you could to make yourself more valuable. And in a weird way, you'll have this feeling inside like, you know what? If you don't value what I bring to this band, I still have all those characteristics and I can bring them to my next project. And you could sleep at night knowing you did your best, and then knowing whatever you have that's valuable that you've cultivated with this group or with all the other groups you were in can now be used in the very next band that you choose to either create or join. So you can't really lose if you follow all these steps, because you're going to grow as a musician, as a person. And if someone doesn't see the value in what you have to bring, then in a weird way, they don't deserve what you have to bring to them. So take all those attributes and move on. And better things will lie ahead for you, I promise. Okay, guys, I know that's going to help you out. If anything, it's just going to raise your stock in any band that you're in, and it's going to make you feel better that you're contributing your efforts towards something that you really want to be a part of. It's going to benefit everybody, you and the band. Okay, everyone, thanks for listening, and I guess we'll catch you at the next lesson. Thanks. Bye.